Last night at GCX, Bungie hosted a panel called Shaping the Path Ahead, Global Content Creators and Bungie. Now, this panel was hosted by Professor Broman and featured 3 Bungie employees. Andy Lunick, Director of Creative Programs. He's been at Bungie for 9 months. Cosmo, our longtime and last remaining OG Global Community Lead. And Jared Ludy, producer for the Bungie Foundation. Now, this panel was about an hour and 30 minutes, and it was essentially a conversation. We've condensed everything down, though, to the main points here. Now, before we dive in, I want to add some context. Bungie is taking steps to improve their communication infrastructure with creators. Andy Lunick was hired to build and lead this team. He has a very lengthy resume, working with companies like Microsoft, Discord, and Epic Games, so it appears he is very experienced. This is also the first time we are hearing about this team, and based on what was said, this entire undertaking is in the very early stages of implementation. So even though these conversations are taking place now, there is a high likelihood we won't see massive changes for quite some time. Also, because this is a summary, much of what was said will not be directly quoted, but will still encapsulate essentially what each individual contributed to that conversation. Now, starting with question number 1. Bungie is becoming a multi-IP studio. What type of content creators are they looking to collaborate with? From Andy here, Bungie doesn't care about the type of content you make. Whatever your style, Bungie wants to work with you, small or large. From Cosmo, anything you're doing for Destiny or Marathon in the future, cosplay, art, etc., you'll have a place in the Bungie community. Bungie wants to work with creators who want to inspire their audience. Essentially, guys, Bungie is making a creator program. They want to drive growth for the creators of their games. And this program isn't targeted at huge creators. Bungie is targeting small creators who may not be well established or lacking resources to execute big ideas. Now, question number 2. What's the plan with working with more creators in the future as things scale up? From Andy, Bungie is building a global creator team to interface with creators, not just English-speaking countries. A single inlet for creators to communicate with Bungie. This includes dedicated emails for communication, technical assistance, resources. Examples include API help, assets, game keys, featured content, collaborations, etc. Bungie isn't looking at small timescales. This is closer to a 10-year program, so nothing immediate here. Now keep in mind, the reason all of this is happening right now is because of Marathon. This isn't a creator program for Destiny. That doesn't mean Destiny creators won't benefit from this, but this is all for Bungie games and most likely include other potential IPs that we don't know about yet. You see, Bungie looks at Destiny already being established, and what they're trying to do here is establish essentially a base for these other games. Now, question number 3. Is Bungie looking to work with creators outside of the gaming space? From Andy, Bungie wants to foster direction and content of all types: food, sculpting, blacksmithing, ensuring all types of creates have support in telling their story. Now, a lot of this discussion seems to be in the context of incorporating the Bungie Foundation into your content to raise money for charity. This doesn't necessarily mean that you need to incorporate a charity into content to work with Bungie, but most likely if you're looking to foster support from Bungie in the forms of streams, projects, and events, anything large scale will most likely have charity involved, which is a good thing. Question number 4. What are the best ways for creators to open up for conversations with Bungie one-on-one? From Cosmo, emails are the first step. Bungie has created dedicated emails for people to reach out to the creator team. From Andy, if you want to one-on-one with Bungie, they don't want it to feel like you're working with a third-party agency, that being a middleman between you and the company. But at the same time, they also don't want to waste creators' time with panels that last hours at a time. Now, this segment of discussion felt very conceptual. Not many solid answers from Bungie yet on how they plan to execute better communication with creators. But considering the lead was hired 9 months ago, again, this is still very early, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of that time was spent getting a team together. Now, the good news is that there is a team, given how much the current methods of communication with the general community is under duress because of bad actors in the community. We didn't know if Bungie was going to be pulling back and just stopping interaction completely, which I've stated before, it's okay to go dark, but it's hard to sell a new IP with no communication. Bungie is going to have to open up, which is why they're going to be moving towards more community interaction with this team. Next question. What are some of the systems that you can use to get in touch with Bungie as a small creator? From Jared, you could share with the Bungie Foundation or the community team what you're already doing for the community. Reach out, Twitter for example, and the teams will most likely see it. From Annie, the timescales at Bungie are very large if you wanted to work with us for the launch of the final shape. You should have emailed us 2 months ago go. They want good ideas with enough time to react. Even planning for GCX events venues is a 6-month process. Small asks aren't a problem, but if you have a big idea, you need to show up to the table knowing what you want to do and why it matters. Paint a picture that Bungie can use as a gauge for long-term impact. It's not about numbers, it's about what you're doing, why it is important to you, and why Bungie should get involved. Again, this seems like it's very targeted towards events that involve charity aspects, events that need planning and proper execution. Next question, how can people best position themselves to work with Bungie? From Andy, Bungie is fine with people who have negative opinions about the game. They specifically do not want to work with people who are toxic. They want people who are consistent, know their audience, and whose values and morals align with Bungie. They do not care about the number of followers. From Cosmo, being critical about the game is not a disqualifier. Be a good human, respectful, not attacking developers, other creators, etc. From Jared, what matters is the message you are putting out there. Next question, what are some of the identifiers Bungie looks for when choosing people to work with? Andy, I like to look at their community. How does their audience behave on Twitter, comment sections, Twitch chats? You can tell a lot about a creator based on the members of the community. Cosmo, in the context of community summits, giving good feedback, working with the devs, not pitching an idea, but being able to identify problems and communicate those to the developers. Now, in my opinion, Bungie wants to work with people who enjoy and add value to their games and communities for good reason. The only concern I have is how critical are you allowed to be before Bungie doesn't want to work with you. Obviously, if you're harassing developers, Bungie is not going to work with you. But these are very manual processes, so every step of these collaborations will be under scrutiny by many individuals. Hopefully, the human side shines through, and this doesn't become an exclusive club for creators who are dissuaded from saying bad things about the games Bungie is making. And look, we've been negative, man. We've also been extremely positive. We call things how we see it. If it looks great, by all means, I'm gonna jump up and say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if it looks like hot ass, we must call it out as such. Next question, anything else that was covered that you want to talk about? Cosmo, if you haven't worked with Bungie yet, don't let that dissuade you from trying to work with Bungie in the future. Andy, this is more than a creator program. This is a conversation Bungie wants to have with you. So guys, that's essentially the gist of everything that was said. This panel may seem like it doesn't affect members of the community that aren't creators, but this may balloon beyond just what was said at GCX. We don't know how Bungie will change their communication strategies post the final shape, and with other communities for new IPs like Marathon and someday maybe even Matter. What we do know is that these new games are going to bring an influx of new players and creators under that Bungie umbrella. So Bungie needs a strategy to better interface with future players. And guys, I've gone through like different iterations of this. I remember back in the day going to Bungie when Activision was kind of running things, right? It was definitely a different vibe back then. Like to me, it felt very corporate. We just kind of got shuffled in, shuffled out. My first time, I was just very, very happy to be there because it was like, yo, I get to be at Bungie for the first time. The second time I went was after the split between Activision and Bungie, and the air changed. It was not a business as usual atmosphere. Bungie was extremely engaged. There was a lot of open discussion, and they were being asked some very tough questions, but they didn't shy away from it. Essentially what you saw like a few weeks ago with like Diablo's developers, where they were addressing essentially the community outrage after they put out that update that nerfed a lot of stuff. Imagine that, but in person. And I gotta say, back then, I was very impressed that Bungie literally took it on the chin. They were like, all right, come to us right here, right now. We're in this room. Ask us anything you want to ask, and we're gonna do everything we can to answer things. And not only would they do everything they could to answer things, they would literally call people in if they couldn't answer. Like if there was a tough question that they just didn't have the answer to, they would be like, hold on 1 second. And they would literally go get the person they needed to bring in to answer that question. I was extremely impressed with that. Now then COVID happened, and no longer did we have that in-person communication anymore. Everything was done via like Zoom. And we would jump in, we would have these meetings, and they were normally extremely long. And even though it was probably the same amount of time, because quite frankly, when you went to Bungie, it was an all-day affair no matter what, these meetings in particular just felt longer. They were honestly a drag to me, and they felt much less interpersonal. I'm glad that Bungie is doing this, but again, what I would recommend going forward is to bring back in-person meetings again. I know it's more expensive to fly people out, to pay for a room, but it's those in-person interactions that will bear great fruits. I promise. Way more than any Zoom meeting. And then on top of that, just for the sake of security reasons, this is important. I know we've had some stuff blow up here lately about NDA and people recording the meetings, but let me just be frank. Even though you may have everyone sign NDAs and tell people you cannot record this meeting, if it is being conducted via Zoom or whatever other means, dude, someone is going to do it. They may do it with their phone, they may do it with their computer. It doesn't matter. People are just going to do it. Even if you do all this threatening, the only way to truly secure things is literally have people come see you in person. Now, for my future content creators or even community members that may be invited to Bungie. Listen, yes, it's exciting to go and visit a studio that you greatly admire, but always be ready to bring the feedback that is necessary for Bungie to hear. And honestly, this goes to any studio you visit. Let me just say, it's uncomfortable going to a studio and telling a bunch of people that, hey, what you've done for the past year has been terrible. Like, who are you to say that, right? You aren't even their boss. And here you are talking smack. But you have a responsibility to your community to relay the points that are necessary. And if you may be thinking, okay, I'm gonna fanboy this first meeting, but then the second meeting or the third meeting, then I'll get to those points. There's no promise that you're gonna get another opportunity, guys. If you're sitting in a room with another game director, say what you need to say. And let me just say this, he may not like you. Matter of fact, everyone in that room may not like you. But I promise you, Bungie in particular will respect you going there and giving them the critical feedback that is necessary. And they're either gonna take it or they're not, but they'll remember it. So make the most out of those opportunities. All right, guys, that's it. That's all I wanted to cover. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.